All right, hey everybody, Teching 101 here. I'm still in Japan for the time being, heading back in a few days. The chapter review for this coming week, chapter 1147, is probably going to be a few days late, but I should be back home when I film that one. But I was like, I'm probably not going to have a lot of opportunities to talk about 1146, before we get like the new chapter out. So I thought I would make one more video while I was here in Japan. Speaking of One Piece chapters, I got this yesterday from a little book stand place, new edition of Shonen Jump magazine. This is the new series that just started this week, Nice Prison. Haven't read it, but it's about a guy that is from a nice prison, I guess. I don't know. But this is a pretty cool souvenir. I actually have to talk about the Japanese book stands and all of the different like magazines that are shonen that have like manga in them. They're very unique. If you live in Japan or have visited Japan, you probably know what I'm talking about. But I got to talk about that because that's interesting. This Shonen Jump is the one that looks different from all the other ones, actually. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about chapter 1146. Just a little bit more expanding on that. So first of all, let's talk about the absolute domination of the Gods Knights, all right? So we're entering the final saga. We're firmly in the final saga right now, okay? So Oda's got to introduce some characters that are really powerful and they can actually stand toe-to-toe with the Straw Hats. But this is a very interesting balancing act because we've had almost 3 decades building up the Straw Hats' strength, them getting stronger, learning new techniques, learning hockey, getting new skills. So you don't want, it's kind of like doing a high-level D&D campaign. You don't want to have an enemy that just rolls in and is just so much stronger than everybody else. Then it's like, well, what's the point of like you even getting stronger, right? So the way that the battle went down between Gunko and the Straw Hats, now keeping in mind Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro were not present, but Jinbei was there, Brook was there, Robin and Chopper were not there. They're over at the Warrior Spring. Nami and Usopp were there to kind of show you exactly what their power level was compared to Gunko. And of course it goes back to the Gorosei's ability. The Gorosei's regenerative abilities does not make them necessarily stronger. Like Gear 5th Luffy was able to like contend with them. It wasn't like Gear 5th Luffy was completely overrun or by the power of the Gorosei. He did get hurt a few times and he was able to hurt them as best as you can. The main issue is this regenerative bullshit. We need to fix this somehow. We need to stop the ability to regenerate, and then it would be more even keel, right? But even so, like, this is not a situation where I feel like Gunko absolutely like is in a league of her own and there's no way the Straw Hats could possibly figure out a way to defeat her. This is really more of an example of like they have never seen her power before and they were just really, really caught off guard with it. But it's one of those things where I feel like a little bit of tactical knowledge would really go a long way here. Now, once again, because she can regenerate, and now that we know that, and since Gunko can regenerate, all of the Gods Knights can regenerate. I've always seen Gunko as like a little bit, I don't know exactly how the Gods Knights hierarchy shakes down. We obviously know there's a Supreme Commander, Garling, and there's regular Commander, Shamrock. I don't know if the other ones like Killingham and Summers and Gunko are all on the same hierarchy, the same tier, or because Gunko seemed to be clearly recruited from the lower realm, if she ranks lower than the others. But my point is, if Gunko can regenerate the same way as the Gorosei can, then they all can, right? Like that makes perfect sense for them to do that. So you're not going to be able to like ultimately defeat her that way through just sheer physical force. The regenerative abilities seem to happen like instantaneously. Like you blow off her head just reforms immediately, almost out of mist or something, right? It doesn't even really have much of a cooldown period, okay? So like Usopp blasted her with the Skull Bomb Grass, completely blew off the top part of her body, and then she just popped right back into existence and still talking, still like in the middle of a monologue, gets blown up and keeps on talking through her regenerating process, okay? So it seems to happen pretty instantaneously, okay? However, like, when it came to Jinbei and Brook, when the way they were defeated, they were all knocked off the Cloud Canoe, but it wasn't like Jinbei was, like, knocked unconscious, like, completely destroyed. Same thing with Brook or Nami. Nami took a pretty solid kick in the jaw, and even she was at the end of the chapter. I mean, she was not unconscious or anything. She was still aware of herself that she was falling down. Usopp got kneed in the face pretty bad by Gunko. So yeah, that was definitely a defeat. But if now they know what her ability is, I'm wondering if they could figure out some way to combat it, all right? It's like, okay, we know that you create these vectors. We know that you create these abilities to, like, direct attacks. Even Brooke stated, you have an ability that allows you to telegraph your moves. How absurd, how ridiculous, right? And was immediately caught off guard by that, by the aloe arrow technique. Now, this is a theory that's popped up a few times, and you know what? Some people might have just said this as a joke, but no, I'm going full steam ahead and calling it like this might actually be the legitimate way that Gunko is defeated. And you know what? If this is the way it goes, I have zero problems with it, okay? Because this has been established before. All right. I was going through each of the Straw Hats. Which one of the Straw Hats do you think is best suited for dealing with Gunko? A character that has a Devil Fruit ability that creates arrows pointing in certain directions. Which Straw Hat is best at dealing with directional attacks? That's right. It's gonna be Zoro. And you know what? That actually works for a number of different reasons. Like, obviously, Sanji cannot fight Gunko because she is a woman, and Sanji just, he can't fight. So, if we're shaking down the Gods Knights here, if we're going with the standard One Piece formula being like, Luffy fights the strongest, Zoro second strongest, Sanji third strongest. Although that whole thing might change now because Jinbei's a member of the crew, and because we're entering the final saga, maybe now Oda is like, let's get away from that a little bit here. Although, I mean, we just had Wano, kind of the same thing. Luffy fought Kaido, Zoro fought King, Sanji fought Queen. There we go. Although I guess in that regard, you could have had Jinbei fight against Jack briefly. That would have been fun, I suppose. But anyway, my point is, Zoro fighting against Gunko would work. Kind of reminds me of like Monet's fight a little bit. But yeah, it would be so great if she generates the arrows and Zoro is able to move against the arrows. Like an arrow vector goes towards Zoro and he's just able to walk right across it, like going the opposite direction the arrow, and Gunko is just stunned, like, how are you doing that? How are you doing that? What? And Zoro is just like, huh? What are you talking about, huh? He's like, your ability sucks. You're not even that direct. You're showing me to go left, and it's like, I don't understand what that is. Your ability is, it doesn't make any sense. And it's just, it might be, dude, I guess it's not, because I think we've seen the ability work like reflexively just on the directions the arrow is pointing. But it would be funny if it was your perception of the direction is what's the thing that actually alters the course. But she can do it with like objects and things too, so that's, yeah, whatever. But like, yeah, Zoro fighting against Gunko. Let's just lock that one in. People have been saying it as a joke. Let's go actual theory with that, because I think that's the best way to fight. So then we have Killingham. All the Gods Knights just dominate. They take out all of the teachers and the principal in this chapter, and Summers defeats Saul. So they're really, really powerful, right? So those are going to be the Straw Hats' enemies here, right? We also have Loki, by the way, so keep in mind. Oh, by the way, in this issue of Shonen Jump, you actually get a really cool, like, poster that actually has Loki in it. Like, hold on, let me see if I can, like, get the whole thing. Like, it's really... Whoa. Like, there we go. Check it out. Upside down Loki. There we go. Giant Loki. All right. So, let me just set that over there. Yep. Yeah, okay. So, we're going to have Loki fight somebody, Luffy fight somebody, and I guess Zoro and Sanji got to fight somebody too. We could also, like, group up as well. Like, I would actually like to see, like, the Straw Hats all, band together now to fight, like, a single opponent. Like, that would be really cool. The MMAs, the Nightmare Creatures, like I said, they're going to be taking care of the Giants. So the reason why all of the Giants cannot just group up and then just they all, like 100 Giants versus Killingham or something, it's going to be because of the Nightmare Creatures. But after Killingham is defeated, those Nightmare Creatures should disappear. Unless it is some kind of thing with Devil Fruits, because sometimes Devil Fruit abilities will linger, which, wait a minute. This is interesting. Because if they can regenerate, that weakness might not work for them, right? Like the idea of knocking out somebody and the devil fruit abilities go away. I mean, it worked at Egghead when the Gorosei got blasted by Joy Boy's Haki. That was like the Haki nuke going off. That turned off all of their devil fruit abilities, and that knocked them all the way back to Marijois. So a big burst of Haki like that can affect their forms, which also makes me think, like, if Zoro did fight Gunko, right? And he was like, okay, well, your arrow ability doesn't work on me, and you can regenerate any wound. So what if Zoro tries to do the same trick he used against King, where he added the Conqueror's Haki on top of the armament, and then try to attack Gunko that way and see what happens there, right? Because we do know a very strong Haki can nullify certain aspects of the Gorosei's ability, which would also go towards the God's Knights as well. Now, when Luffy was in Gear 5th fighting the Gorosei at Egghead, I am sure at some point Luffy was using the same kind of abilities he was fighting Kaido with, you know, Conqueror's armament kind of thing right there. It just might be like if they exert a lot of Haki, it might stall the regeneration, it might, you know, not work. I'm not really sure how that works. But my point is that knocking out Killingham might not be feasible. You know, even when the Gorosei got hit with Joy Boy's Haki, they didn't get knocked out. They got knocked out of their mythical forms, and then they got knocked all the way back to Marijois, like the Abyss ability seemed to dissolve from that Haki nuke going off. But they didn't lose consciousness. They seemed a little winded, but they didn't lose consciousness. So I don't know. Maybe if you exerted enough Haki, like if the Haki nuke went off, Killingham's ability would just fall apart, you know, immediately. But I don't think Emmett's going to be around to blast another Haki nuke anytime soon, so the Straw Hats are kind of on their own for this one. They had help last time. This time they kind of don't, right? They're on their own, right? So it'd be interesting, though, just for Zoro to, like, kind of how when he was fighting King, where he was, like, trying to figure out the fight, like, okay, how do I defeat him? Oh, when he has the flames turned on, that's really hard to beat him, so I have to attack him when the flames are off, so I have to time it right. So, yeah, different methods to really test the regeneration, I think, is better on the God's Knights than on the Gorosei, right? So maybe they could knock out Killingham, but maybe no matter what they do, he just keeps regenerating, because the power doesn't seem to be something coming from them. People have even said the Abyss is also another aspect of Imu giving the powers to the God's Knights and the Gorosei. Or maybe the Gorosei, like, maybe they can delegate. Maybe, like, Imu gave the abilities to the Gorosei, and then the Gorosei, in turn, can bestow limited aspects of the ability. Like, Imu, it's like a pyramid scheme, right? Like, Imu is the one at the very top, so he has, or they have, all of the powers, right? And then the Gorosei get a certain move set of that, and when they've leveled up enough, they can then pass that ability down to other people, the God's Knights there, right? Other than that, or like Imu literally calls like every single member of the Gorosei into their room, like, Saint Summers, bow before me, I bestow you the power of the Abyss. Now Gunko, come in. Gunko, I bestow you the power of the Abyss. You know, it could be something like that, but, you know, maybe it just delegates out. I'm not sure. But yeah, this is probably going to be the arc where Oda's already explained a little bit about the Abyss more than we knew from Egghead, and he does this a lot. You know, you'll establish certain aspects in a story arc in, like, the previous one, and then in the following story arc, we expand upon those ideas, okay? So we learned a little bit about the Abyss so far. I think we're going to learn even more as we go, right? Okay. And then we have Summers. Summers, who defeated Saul and has that entire briar, that thorny area that he created, and he can create like a giant thorn club combined with Haki sort of thing. He was slashing Saul apart, and Saul's last words to Robin before he passed out and Chopper were like, hey, please protect the children no matter what, and he's like, ugh, and then he falls down, right? And Robin is like, you know, having a panic attack. She's freaking out. Chopper's also freaking out. So I'm not really sure what their two are gonna do. Like, I would say Robin steps out and she's all like serious and angry and pissed off and like, how dare you attack my friend? But like, she's so freaked out right now over this happening again. I don't even know if she's gonna be able to, like, maybe Chopper has to be like, get a hold of yourself, Robin, we need to fight, you know? Because I guess Saturn doesn't even know I guess Summers doesn't even know they're there right now inside of Saul's beard. So they would have the opportunity, I think, to get away, because Summers is going to go over to where Killingham is and use the Dango Mushi, use the Telediction snail to relay something all over Elbaf about, like, you know, hey, we have your children, and if you ever want them back, then you gotta bow before us and all that kind of jazz, right? So, not really sure what's up with Robin and Chopper, but I don't think they're going to be jumping out of Saul's beard next chapter and fighting against Summers. I don't think the way that's going to go down. I think he's going to leave, they're going to sneak out, Chopper's going to do some quick first aid on Saul so he doesn't die, you know, just to staunch the bleeding and all that, and then Robin is going to go try to save the children, because that was Saul's last wish, okay? Also something he did for her when back at O'Hara, when he was being frozen by Aokiji, and then he's like, you gotta live, Robin, you gotta get out of here, and so she's like, I'm going to do the same thing, Saul, I'm going to help the kids just like you helped me. Something like that is more important, right? So, yeah, it's fun, though, because trying to figure out how this is going to go. It doesn't seem like, oh, the Straw Hats are easily going to get their second win, and they're going to kick the shit out of all the Gods Knights, and they're going to knock them all out, and all their Devil Fruit abilities are going to go away, and they're going to nullify the regeneration, and they're going to stop the Abyss, and they're going to take out the Gods Knights, and victory for all, and everything's fantastic and good. Like, the Straw Hats would very well might win the fight, but it's just like, I'm not sure how yet. You know, Oda's keeping it in a way of, like, there's no easy, quick resolution to this, given the movesets of the Gods Knights and the abilities that they are given by Imu or the Gorosei, right? So I kind of like that. Now, moving on to another big aspect of this chapter was at the end, when we're learning a little bit more about the relevance of the giants here. Gunko specifically mentions that for whatever reason, this time around, whoever the giants ally themselves with is going to be very important. It's going to be the thing that tips the scale in this upcoming battle now, okay? So that implies that, yes, the giants throughout history of the First World and the Second World, they picked a side and they allied with a certain group. I think it's pretty obvious they allied with Joy Boy's group back during the Void Century in the Second World because of the Sun God Nika and everything like that, and they worship the Sun God. But for whatever reason, they're like, no, this is different. Like, the giants are going to be a big factor here, okay? It could be just because of their strength. It could be because of how their longevity is, and so they might remember stuff better than the past, or it might just be magical prophecy bullshit that says that, like, a giant shall be born in the third age, and he will hearken in the end of the era, you know, and that could be Loki. We see a giant on the mural. We see two giants, actually, on the mural. One looks just more of like your standard giant. Another one has the horned helmets, like the representative of the ancient giants, which could very well be Loki. I interpreted it to be Loki anyway, right? So we have that. So, and then that also ties in to what Summers was saying as he was kind of shit-talking Harald, where he's like, Harald, you really screwed the pooch big on this, right? Like, you were supposed to be our mercenaries, you were supposed to be working with us, you were supposed to be allying with us and forming an army for us, the world government, and then he's looking around and is like, what is this, a school, a library, educational programs? What nonsense is this? You know, you're warriors, you should be fighting, you know? So it is really fascinating to me, and because the government apparently was working with Harald, and then something happened, and then the battle occurred, and then Harald died. Loki killed him. I'm pretty sure Loki is the one that ultimately killed his father, not for reasons of him just being evil, but there were reasons for that. I'm not saying Harald's still kind of up in the air on his level of evil. Loki, I don't think, was just straight cold-blooded. Like, there was a reason why he killed his father. That was, like, for the safety of Elbaf, right? But we also know that before Harald died, like about 20 years ago, you know, he died 14 years ago, 20 years ago, or a little bit before that, he started to establish the school, which would have been right. So this stuff is happening concurrently, if I'm not mistaken. Like, Harald having dealings with the world government and having the Abyss Circle in his throne room and talking to the Gods Knights and trying to figure out a deal there, all the while also establishing a school and a library. And, well, the library, I guess, has been there for a while because Biblo has been around for a while, but the school, at least, is a new thing. So, you know, was Harald was either evil, naive, or he was actually a really good king. He genuinely was a good king that was double-crossing the government in some way. You know, it's just like, oh, yeah, I'll agree to be your mercenary group. Sure, I'll work with the government, but like I don't think he would have done that for nothing. Like there had to have been something the government was offering Harald. You could just say that was just like the entrance to the world, opening up the country, allowing free trade and everything to be, that would work like better for Elbaf and like the society and everything like that. You could have just said that they were agreeing to that in exchange for some giant mercenaries from Elbaf. I don't know if that really seems like I don't know, man. Like if I was a king of a giant nation, right, that had been isolated for most of, history, and then the government rolls up to my front door and they're like, "Hey, we have a deal for you. You give us all of your giant armies, and in exchange, you get to join our government." And you get like trade and stuff. It's like, okay, that doesn't sound like an even trade to me, right? Like that doesn't seem like a fair thing. Like just like how about you just let all the giants work for the government now, and you do everything we tell you to do. If you go over there and we want you to burn an entire island down and be mercenaries and kill our enemies, you do that, and in exchange you get to join us. It doesn't seem like there's much in it for the giants at that point, right? So it makes me wonder, like, if Harald agreed to that. But later on, Harald did plan on double-crossing the government, and he established, like, the school and everything. So Harald might have been playing, like, the long game here, and then Loki found out about it, and Loki was like, oh my god, my father is allying with the world government. This is awful. This is bad. I need to kill him to stop this. And then he did. And it might have just been a massive misunderstanding. Like, Loki, you don't understand. 4D chess. I'm like this. There's a story of a brilliant tactician. His name is Kinemon. And I was following in his footsteps. I was doing this multi-leveled plan of subterfuge to eventually, ruin the government's plan. But Loki is like, Father, no. He's like, no, Loki, you don't understand. And then he died. I don't know. I don't know yet. Because from the way that every giant talks about Harald, and not just the giants in the village, but also Hyrudin. Remember, Hyrudin and Loki were Harald's children. They would have known that man better than just every other giant in the village that talks about him, that's just, like, oh my god, King Harald, he was incredible, he was the greatest king ever, we all loved King Harald, he was the best king ever. It's like, okay, that's like public opinion, maybe some propaganda thrown in there. Hyrudin would know best, and Loki would know best on how their father really was, and they have not really said anything super negative about him, right? Hyrudin didn't really be like, well, father was rather naive at times, or father might have been seen in public as a nice guy, but he was rather taciturn and strict behind the scenes. Like, they never said anything like that. Even in the flashbacks that we are seeing from Hyrudin and Loki's perspectives, Harald seemed to be a really genuine, kind person. And this story of how he ripped his horns off, we don't know if that story is true. Maybe it was he ripped his horns off for other reasons, or maybe he lost them in another way. That's typically what Oda will do. He'll establish, oh, this is the reason this happened, and then later on we find out a completely different reason that changes the context entirely, right? Yeah. But it could be just the thing where maybe Harald was really good at manipulation, right? Like, he was really good at playing that kindly benefactor king sort of person, but in reality he was super malicious behind the scenes. He just hid that from everybody, including his own children. He could have just been playing really good Machiavellian schemes with that. Like, he's just really two-faced. It could have been something like that. Could have been. But he definitely pissed off the government, and he definitely did something to piss off Loki, and the rest of the giants love him, right? So there's a story there, and we need to get Loki's flashback. I think we're going to get this from Loki's end and Loki's perspective to really shed the best light on this, of really what Harald was doing and what he was up to and all that stuff. But yeah, there's the idea that he was weakening Elbaf because of the school and everything, like changing the culture. But was that there to try to change the prophecy of the Harley, or to be like that? Or, oh, here's another way. What if, when the prophecy apparently says something, and by the way, I don't know where Gunko is getting, like, the giants are going to be important this time around, because I don't think there's anything in the Harley that specifically mentions that, like, whoever the Giants ally with will change the outcome of the Third Age. There's nothing in that about the Harley, so that might be something they learned from Emu directly. Like the Gods Knights and the Gorosei were told by Emu about, like, yeah, the Giants, we need to get the Giants to join us. This is really, really important for this particular battle, right? Okay, whether or not it's by force or they ally with us or whatever. So what if whatever interpretation Emu is going with this, what if there was a different interpretation for Harald? And Harald was like, the Giants will be significant in the upcoming battle. There was like maybe a mistranslation in the prophecy. And so maybe he thought, instead of the warfaring culture of the Giants, maybe he interpreted it as the Giants need to become more educated. They need to get away from war. They need to go towards peace. Kind of like when the most warfaring, battle-hungry group in the world, the Giants, make the shift towards peace, that is when the world will have true peace. Like, it might be just symbolic, it might be quite literal, I'm not really sure about that one. But that would be something, wouldn't it? That would be something really interesting. But we need to learn a little bit more about even where that prophecy is being spoken of and where Gunko learned about it, right? A lot of stuff to pick up in this arc. A lot of stuff to learn. All right. Well, anyway, that's a good video. I just wanted to bring up some stuff from the chapter and talk about it a bit. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Brook and how he knows the Gods Knights, but that could be a separate thing. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. When I get back, I'm going to show you all the stuff I got from Japan. Obviously, I have a lot of stuff. My suitcase over here is essentially filled with a bunch of, like, omiyage and, like, souvenirs and stuff from Japan. I went to the Mugiwara store yesterday, and I got some really cool pictures there, and I bought a bunch of souvenirs, One Piece related. I got, like, a Robin plushie and all that kind of stuff. There's some interesting stuff in the Mugiwara store. We went in the one in Shibuya. So, yeah, I gotta show you all that stuff. Don't worry, I'll show you everything I got from my trip. It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, but for right now, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching, signing out. Bye.